So, happy Pride, everybody. As you might have noticed, my name is Freya, and I'm in a great attire because I'm a drag performer, and I'm based in Graz, as you heard. But before I wanted to start my talk, I wanted to ask you one simple question. It's not that simple, but a question. Have you ever done something in the purest intent and with the best intention in mind and got publicly called a criminal? I hope not. Well, I did and I was. And this is the story I want to tell you today. But I promise you it's going to have a happy ending. So, if you live in Austria, chances are high that you might have seen this face in the newspapers 2 months ago. This is because I was performing on the 16th of April in the Turquoise Rosa Lila Villa, one of the most important queer safe spaces and a queer landmark of the rainbow city of Vienna. But this was not by any means an ordinary performance. Because while I was performing, outside were not only several TV stations, but also hundreds of police officers and hundreds of people protesting. The reason? I was performing a drag story time for kids. A disgrace. A crime! But is it though? There's a lot to unravel here, and a lot has been unraveled today, but there's one thing I want to get into with you. It's why the protesters couldn't be further from the truth when they said drag for kids is a crime. I want to tell you why doing or experiencing drag might actually be healthcare and the healthcare we might need. But let's start at the beginning. So, we are now 8 billion people at this time of history on this earth. And the wonderful thing is, not two human beings look alike, feel alike, love alike, act alike. But the thing is, humans tend to do one thing. They're not good with complexity. So they have to put everything into neat little boxes. And over centuries and eons, we humans created molds to make people fit into these boxes. In the stories we tell each other, the books we read, the fairy tales, we get in contact with these molds very early on. And we are perpetuating these stories over and over and over again. And we learn them by heart, and we think of them as universal truths, even though they aren't. But what happens if you don't fit a mold perfectly? Let's change the image for a short minute. So imagine yourself, your personality, what makes you up, your body, your abilities, what you can do, what you can't do, who you love, how you feel, everything. Imagine this as a rich, wonderful cookie batter. But there are also cookie cutters. And these cookie cutters is what you're supposed to like, how you're supposed to look like, how you're supposed to act. And it's simply how and which place you're supposed to take in society. Okay, cookie cutter, cookie batter. Zack. You have a very friendly, very round, socially and society-friendly cookie. But what do we do with the stuff that got cut off? Many people who don't fit a mold perfectly are being told that all the stuff that doesn't fit is wrong. Even if it's just by accident, being told that some part of you isn't good enough or is wrong, or that you should hide it just to fit in, it hurts. These words cut deep and thoroughly, and they have the ability to scar for life. As a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, I, as well as many others, had their experiences not really fitting in all the time or ever. And at times, I personally felt lost, very lost. And when it was darkest for me, a couple of years back, I found art. I found the art of drag. What I feel when I'm at a drag show is utter freedom and playfulness. And for me, drag is not really about getting lost into a perfect illusion of a man or a woman or a human being. It is just a wonderful paradox. And it's about basically remembering all the stuff that didn't get to the cookie. It is inherently playful. It is taking gender roles, discovering these parts of yourself, and it's having fun with it. And it's embracing your inner femininity, masculinity, non-binarity. It's about discovering your queerness and giving it a stage. By using art, I mean costumes, wigs, makeup, dance, storytelling, you name it, you put that wonderful cookie batter out on display for everyone to see. When I started doing drag, it felt like mental health care for me. I embraced all these things. I dressed them up, I gave them a name, and Freya van Kant was born. A feeling was inside of me that I never really experienced before. It's the feeling of being whole in a way. And to be honest, this is something that I want. I talked about the 8 billion people, you know? This is something I want every one of these 8 billion people to experience at least once in their lifetime. Doing drag and watching drag can do so much for the community, as well as the audience, people doing it. And this is why I ultimately started doing transformation workshops, as well as, in collaboration with Queens Brunch Vienna, drag story time for kids. You know, every drag performer has a private life, and part of my private life is I own a master's degree in education and I work full-time in education. And I always wanted to put these things together, like education and queer art. Because if drag can make adults happy and joyful, why not children and their parents? So we created these 1 hour-long shows that celebrate inner and outer diversity. We take stories, we look at them, and we have a little fun with it. A princess story? Of course. But this time, the princess sets out on an adventure, rescuing a prince and fighting a dragon. We give parents and children a chance to throw away those molds, to become who they are instead of who they should be. I want to tell and perform stories that clearly say you could instead of you should. Stories that show kids that they are okay as they are, that they mustn't be afraid of themselves or others, that they are allowed to be courageous, that they are allowed to stand up for themselves and for others. I want kids to be able to find their own place in the world. And that in a storytelling hour full of laughter, full of music and dancing, full of queer art. And opening up worlds of possibilities instead of reducing them to a minimum. One of the questions I get is, okay, everything fine, but why drag performers? Okay, so drag performers are not just ordinary storytellers. First, they are very good at it. And second, even in all their makeup, in the wigs, in the costumes and everything, they ooze authenticity. Because everything they say comes from a place of love and from a place of personal experience. So if somebody gives me that questions, I answer back, if not drag queens, who else? And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this. Drag is most definitely not a crime. Drag is for everybody to experience as well as to do. And go to drag shows. Read to children. Look at the stories you're reading to them. Tell stories, tell new stories. And in the beginning, I promised you a happy ending. There is one. So on the 16th of April, while I was performing inside, I saw into the glistening eyes of children. They could see themselves in that princess. They fell in love with her, and they could see her not giving up, not giving into what others might have wanted of her. And they could see themselves in her. And while outside there were 100 protesters, there were like 500 counter-protesters, protecting us inside and showing the world that this art form is supposed to be protected.
The LGBTQIA+ community stands up for one another.
And later that day, we took to the street. We had a block party. And in Vienna, this year, Pride started a little early in April. And what started out as a dreadful day of what might be, became a day of celebration, of breaking molds. Thank you.